All right, welcome to Active Life, Passive Income. I've got Josh Steimle. Am I saying that right? Josh Steimle?
Steimle rhymes with timely.
Steimle here, and oh my gosh, Josh is so accomplished. So Josh Steimle, he's got a lot of amazing accomplishments. He's the creator of the 7 Systems of Influence, a framework used by leaders to attract attention, earn respect, and build relationships of trust. He's the founder of MWI, an award-winning global marketing agency that he launched in 1999. And, there were some rough things with that, which I think I might have him talk about that he had to deal with. But at this pivotal moment in his life, he was actually invited to contribute articles to Forbes. And Josh wrote, the articles Josh wrote brought widespread attention that led to opportunities to write more than 300 articles for more than 24 publications, including Time, Inc., Entrepreneur, Fast Company, Mashable, and TechCrunch. So he's very an accomplished author and influencer. In fact, he even gave a TEDx talk to an audience of over 1,000 people in Hong Kong. I got to see part of that. And since then, he's been a public speaker at world events. In fact, he's coming on to he's going to be a keynote speaker at our upcoming conference mastermind in Miami, Florida. And so can't wait. So, he's got so many accomplishments. He's got a book, 60 Days to LinkedIn Mastery, that's coming out in November. He's fluent in Portuguese, Spanish, and a bit of Mandarin, having lived in Asia for 6 years. So he's got so many amazing adventures and experiences. We're gonna just probably catch the tip of the iceberg today. But Josh, thank you so much for joining today. We're really excited to have you as a guest on the show.
Thank you, Nate. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit about, what are you involved in right now? Tell me a little bit about the businesses and the things that you got going right now, Josh.
I'm involved in too many things, that's for sure. But
yeah, I hear you.
the main thing I'm working on is I have a consulting firm called 7 Systems, and we offer services based around the 7 Systems of Influence. And so one of the main programs that we run right now is called Published Author, and it's a program. It's masterminds, masterclasses, online courses that we use to help entrepreneurs write a book that they can leverage to grow their business. So that's one of our main initiatives going on right now, and that's where I'm spending most of my time.
Nice. And I'll definitely, even though I didn't use your company for it, I'll definitely give a plug for writing a book. I mean, I've got a book coming out in March. Active Life, Passive Income is the name of the book. And
awesome. We'll have to have you on the Published Author podcast when it comes out.
Yeah, I'd love to be. I mean, I'm telling you, writing a book, if any of you are thinking about writing a book, definitely do it. And I got to think Josh is definitely one of the best people that can help you with that. So Josh, tell us a little bit about, I read a little bit about your story. I mean, it's never a clear, easy cut journey, right? To get to the mountain of success. And obviously we're always still climbing. We're always trying to improve and grow. But tell us a little bit more about, I gave a few highlights, but tell us a little bit more of your journey and how you kind of got started as an entrepreneur and kind of how did you get to where you're at with, all the success I mentioned to introduce you.
Yeah, it's often messy to get anywhere worth going to. And certainly my history has been perhaps messier than most. I tend to have to learn things by going through the experience and maybe going through it a few times before the lesson actually sinks in. Other people can read a book and they can figure it out and say, okay, I'm just going to do things right the first time. But I'm one of those people that's like, no, I'm going to do it my way. And then it doesn't work out. And I'm like, well, I'm going to do it again that way. And then I do it again. And then finally I realize, that book was probably right. I should just do it that way. But I got my start in
Mm.
entrepreneurship at a young age, recycling cans and picking up newspapers from my neighbors back when you could actually make decent money as a kid doing that. And that was kind of my introduction to, hey, I can go do something and I can make money doing this, and then I can buy my own toys and stuff. So that was
Mm,
kind of my first taste of entrepreneurship. And then I grew up in a home where my mother was a school teacher and she was creative type. And my father was a NASA engineer, worked on the Hubble Space Telescope, engineering type of guy, but also he was entrepreneurial. He started little businesses here and there to market some of the inventions that he had. And so I grew up in this environment with creative, smart people who gave me a lot of freedom to feel safe that I could do something and fail. And then if I failed, I could pick myself up and I could try again. And I think that gave me the confidence to go out and start trying to launch little businesses. So even when I was in high school, I was starting businesses. I was either competing against the vending machines by selling candy at school, or I was selling skateboard goods out of the back of my car at skate spots. But the first real business I started was when I was in my 20s. I was at college in Provo, Utah, there at BYU,
oh.
and I was working for a .com. So this is 1999, and I'm watching these guys who started this business a few months ago. They're dropping out of school, they're raising millions of dollars, they're flying around, meeting with interesting
Mm,
people and growing this business. And I was working as a web designer for them, but I was looking at them and I was thinking, man, I want to do that. That looks like fun. And I mean, are these guys geniuses? Are they anybody special? Or could I do that? Maybe I could do that. And that was the germ of it all, was just to think, I think I could do that. And I only lasted there about 5 months before I was going crazy. And I said, I've got to start my own business.
mm.
And I had just married my wife about 3 months before this. And I went to her and I said, I want to start my own business. I want to quit my job, start a business. We were both students in school. And she's like, well, I guess we're broke. I mean, what could go wrong? I mean, we
Can
can't
it
get
get
any
any
worse, right?
worse, right, than being a broke student anyway?
Yeah, and surprise, surprise, it actually can get quite a bit worse because you can go into debt. And
Mm.
but anyway, she let me start a business, and that's the agency MWI that is still
So,
running today, despite all the
mm,
mistakes I've made. It's still around today, and it's kicking. And we've got an office in Hong Kong, and we've got
wow.
our offices in the U.S. And that's led to all the other opportunities that came after that. So that was my start.
Wow. So did you drop out of school then, or did you keep going and do the business on the side?
I kept going. I've always been a little bit unrealistic about how many things I can do at once. And so I thought, no problem. I'm doing a master's degree and I'm starting a business. No problem. Right. And it turned out to be a lot of problems, but this, my degree survived. I got my degree and the business survived, and I had my business. So I graduated and I had a business with 10 employees that was doing at least okay at that point. But actually, part of the impetus was that my employer that I was working for came to me and said, we want you to drop out of school and work full time for us.
Mm.
And that's when I said, I don't think that's what I should do. I think I need to stay in school. I think I should stay in school. And so I thought, well, I guess the choice is either I quit school or I quit this job. So that's when I quit the job and said, well, I'm going to start my own business now.
Nice. So that was a pivotal moment from being like a W-2 worker to being your own boss and just going for it, right?
Yeah, the interesting part of the story is that the company I quit became Omniture, which got acquired by Adobe for 1.8 billion. And when they made me the full-time offer, they were doing their first round of stock, and I could have had 3,000 shares of the very first round of stock options at that company. And
Oh
I'm not sure
man.
how many houses I could have bought with that when they finally went public, but sometimes I think about that. I'm like, yeah, could have had a good paying job and a couple of houses, but instead I started my own business and went broke. So I think I still came out ahead in the end, though.
Absolutely. I love it. So, and tell us more about what happened after that. I mean, I know you said you worked for a company that, well, I won't spoil it, but tell us about some of those traumatic bumps in the road that you experienced.
Well, I started this agency and I thought, well, I'm going to set up a website and I'll put a sticker on my car saying that I do web design services. And then tons of people will come and hire me to design websites, and I'm going to make $1 million. I thought that's how being an entrepreneur worked. And so I put a sticker on my car and I set up a website, and then nothing happened. Nobody called me. There was no flood of customers. And I thought, maybe I should have kept that job. Maybe this was a mistake. And it went like a month like that. And I mean, thank goodness eBay had just been launched. And so I sold everything I owned on eBay to support us for the next month or two.
Mm.
And then finally, my first client actually came from a telemarketing call. A guy called me trying to sell me something. And I was like, dude, I'm broke. Like, I can't buy anything from you. He's like, well, what do you do? I said, I just launched a web design business. And he says, oh, my brother needs a website. Let me give you his number. And he gave me his number. And that became my first client, was the
Mm.
telemarketer who referred me to his brother. And I made
Nice.
15 bucks an hour designing that website. And then somebody else called me and I got 18 bucks an hour, and then it went to 20 and then 25. And within a couple months, I was making like 60 bucks an hour. As a student, I felt like I was on top of the world.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that's when I said, gee, I could go hire employees and get office space and have a real company. And so that's what I did. And then I realized, 60 bucks an hour doesn't go that far when you're paying people's salaries and paying for office space. And
Yeah.
so I basically went broke again. But I had brought on some partners and we kept it going for the next 2.5 years. And that company did well in terms of, we built a brand for ourselves and people knew who we were and we were doing great work. But behind the scenes, we were broke, we were losing money.
Mm.
And so we got into a situation where we kind of had to sell the business. And I wasn't getting along with one of my partners. And I thought, let's just sell this business. I'll start over. I'll do it my way, the right way, without any partners holding me back. And so we sold that business, which also turned into a nightmare acquisition that went south and was terrible. But I got out of
Dang.
that, started over again. And then it turned out I didn't really know what I was doing. So the next 10 years, from 2003 to 2013, basically was the company limping along, doing well sometimes, doing terrible other times. I mean, we'd have these months where we
Mm.
made 100 grand one month and then we'd make 20 grand the next month. But the expenses, of course, always stayed steady at around 50 or 60 grand. So some months it was like, yeah, 40 grand in profit
Mm.
this month. And then the next month it was like, we just lost 30 grand in one month. And so
Oh man.
within a few years, I was up to over $500,000 in business debt that I was personally guaranteed on and couldn't get rid of and didn't want to get rid of. Not a big fan of bankruptcy. So uh, that's where I found myself in 2013 when I got the magic phone call to write for Forbes.
Mm. So you were on the brink of bankruptcy. You didn't actually have to declare.
I didn't have to declare, but it was kind of like, gee, I've been doing this for a long time at this point, and I just keep losing more and more money every month. And what really was about to put the nail in the lid of the coffin was that I had hired a new account manager. Actually, I had a partner that was doing a lot of fulfillment work and managing my client accounts. And he hired a new account manager who was not very good at managing accounts. And we lost all but three of our clients in about 2 months.
Ooh.
And so I was down to three clients. It wasn't even covering expenses. And I was just like, man, maybe this is it. Maybe I just need to quit and throw in the towel and go get a normal job, and I'll pay these hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt off over the next 20 years. Maybe that's what I need to do, because I didn't want to end up in $1 million of debt.
Yeah.
So that's the moment when that opportunity to write for Forbes came along, and that changed everything.
Mm. And that gave you the money to be able to climb out of your situation and kind of transform everything.
Yeah, it was writing for Forbes. It was two things. It was writing for Forbes, and at the same time, I brought on another partner. And I hadn't had a partner since 2003 when we sold the first company, because I had had a bad experience with the partner. Not his fault. He's a good guy, but just personality stuff and immaturity. And so that turned me off on partners. So I didn't have a partner for 10 years, but finally I came around to the conclusion, I need a partner. I can't do this on my own. And so I brought in a partner in 2013, right when I got the opportunity to write for Forbes. And so what happened was
Mm.
I wrote some articles for Forbes and they were popular, but they weren't doing anything for the business. And I was purposely not writing about what our agency did because I felt like that would be self promotional. And I was really nervous about getting kicked off of Forbes. So I
Yeah.
didn't want to do anything that seemed to be self serving or driving attention to me or my business. But then I saw that everybody else writing for Forbes was always talking about their experiences and dropping hints at what they did for business. And I thought, well, if they're doing it, maybe I can do it. And plus, I thought, this is what I know. This is where I can really help people, is talking about my experience as an agency owner. So maybe I should be a little bit more forward about that. So I started writing articles about how to work with a marketing agency, how to hire a marketing agency, how to do marketing, and just trying to explain what it's like to be in a company and go hire an agency and how you get work done the right way. Well, it turns out that people who are looking to hire agencies go on Google and type in things like how to hire an agency. And so my articles were popping up at the top when people
Yeah.
are searching for how to hire an SEO firm or how to hire a marketing agency. And they'd read my article and say, hey, I like this. This is good stuff. By the way, who wrote this? Oh, this guy, he runs a marketing agency and we're trying to hire a marketing agency. Why don't we hire the guy who's writing for Forbes? And so we just got tons of leads. And my partner that I had brought on was fantastic at selling and biz dev and closing deals. And so during the 12 months after he came on and after I started writing for Forbes, we grew about 1400% in
Wow.
monthly revenue. And we were just on this rocket. And we are just like, wow, this is amazing. We're just landing deals left and right. I mean, we could not keep up with it. And that opened up all the doors for us to start the office in Hong Kong, for us to hire better people. And it just turned everything around.
How long did it take you from when you started writing with Forbes to finally make this realization that, hey, it's okay to plug yourself a little bit and you're adding value and you can add even more value if you work with them, right? So, how long did it take you to kind of make that realization?
It was about 6 months, 6 or 7 months. And again, I was being cautious. I knew I could do this. I just thought I would get in trouble.
Mm.
But I just realized I'm writing all these articles and it's not doing anything for my business. It's fun and people like the articles. But if this isn't helping my business, which was having problems, well, why am I doing this? I've got to make this pay somehow. And so that's when I decided, well, I can either keep writing and get no results, or I can take the risk of writing something that might get me in trouble. But worst case scenario, I get kicked off and then I get no results. So same difference. So, but if it works, then who knows? So I tried it, it worked. And we can track today, we can track over $10 million in revenue back to the articles that I wrote for Forbes and then later
Wow.
for other publications.
10 million. And I got to think that's partly what's inspired you to try and help other people by writing their books and establishing their credibility, right? Because it comes back to you so big, right?
Right. And it was less inspiration and more somebody else coming and giving me the idea,
Mm.
because I knew this was great for me, but it never really occurred to me that, hey, I could go out and help other people do this because I was busy running the agency. But I came to this point where I started bringing more people into the business and my partner was starting to step up and take over more. And I thought, really, if this is going to be a successful business, I need to be able to turn it over to my partners and have them run it without me. And so I thought it'd be a good experiment for me to step back, be less involved, and see what happened and just make sure that we really have a solid business. Well, as I stepped back, I had free time. And at that same time, somebody came to me, an executive from a large company, and she said, hey, I've seen what you've done with writing for these publications and how it's led to speaking engagements and people know who you are. Can you help me do this? I'll pay you to coach me. And I thought, I don't know the first thing about coaching, and so I actually turned her down, but it planted the seed where I thought, I wonder if there are other people out there who are interested in this, and maybe this is what I can do with my free time. And so that led to eventually starting another company and doing research on influence and thought leadership. And that became the 7 systems of influence. And then That's what's led to where we are today, where what we came to is this conclusion that if you're going to really engage in thought leadership, you need to have a book because there's authority and credibility that comes with
Mhm.
that. That's hard to build any other way. But if you have the book, it makes everything easier. It makes it easier to get speaking engagements. It makes it easier to get attention on social media. It makes it easier to attract partners and employees because everybody figures, hey, once you've got a book, you must really know what you're talking about, which isn't
It's
exactly
just,
true, but people think it.
yeah, it's an automatic credibility boost on steroids, isn't it? So, wow, what a journey you've had, Josh. Tell us a little bit about what are some of the key lessons that you feel like you've drawn from this amazing journey that you've been on?
I think one of the biggest turnaround points for me with the business came in 2007, which when we do the mastermind retreat, I'll talk about this a little bit more. But the first 7 years of my business, I thought that the way to success was to knock yourself out working as hard as you possibly could.
Mm,
You hear these quotes like work like nobody else so you can live like nobody else type of thing. And I thought,
yes.
okay, I'm working like nobody else is willing to work. And so I was putting in the 100-hour weeks. I was working 6 days a week,
Dang.
12, 15 hours a day. I was sleeping on the floor at the office. I'd go to sleep at 3 a.m. I'd wake up at 6 a.m. in the office and keep on working. I wouldn't go home for 3 days. I was missing weddings and family reunions and everything. And
Whoa.
my wife is at home and she's just like, okay, what is going on here? And my excuse was always, I've got to do this for the business. This is how it's done. This is how everybody does it. This is what I learned during the whole dot-com boom is this is what you do to be successful. And after 7 years, I found myself unsuccessful. I had actually gone 4 years without paying myself from 2003 to 2007. I didn't take a dime out of the business. We were living in a studio apartment above somebody's garage. We drove one car with no air conditioning, and I was in $500,000 of debt. And I'm like, something is not working out here because I am working hard and doing a lot of stuff.
Uh,
And then I see other agencies just like mine and they're making millions of dollars. They're giving out bonuses at the end of the year. They're doing all this great stuff that I want to be doing, and they're not putting in the long hours and they're not in debt. And I'm like, I'm doing something wrong here. Whatever I'm doing, it's not sustainable, and I'm going to die young if I keep doing it. I mean, I was eating junk food. I was just
mm.
not sleeping. I got super fat and just wasn't exercising. It was
You
just like
got fat.
everything.
You look so skinny and in shape right now.
Well, yeah, you should see the photos from me back around 2007. January
Wow.
2007, I mean, I wasn't morbidly obese, but I was peaking out at 240 pounds. And if you saw the photos from back then, I was unrecognizable.
Wow.
And I was like 240 pounds, no muscle. Like I would walk up one flight of stairs, like 10 stairs, and I couldn't talk to somebody for 5 minutes because I was wheezing so hard for 5 minutes to
Oh my
catch my breath.
gosh.
I mean, I was so out of shape. And I knew I was going to die young if I kept that up. And so
Hmm.
it got to this point where I was like, something's got to break, something's got to change. I don't know what it is, but I know that this is wrong the way that I'm living my life here. And the only thing I could figure out to do was, well, I know I can go to the gym. I don't know what to fix in my business. I don't know how to fix my personal life, but physically, I know that if I go to the gym, it will help me get in shape and be healthier. That was easy. That's simple. And so I started going to the gym and I started losing weight. And the funny thing that happened
Hmm.
was I realized when you pursue excellence in one area of your life, it tends to pull up the other areas of your life. Like you can't be excellent in one area and then leave all the other areas down here. Either that area
Hmm.
that you're excellent in is going to get pulled back down to the level of everything else, or everything else has to rise to meet that level of excellence in the other area. So as I started to get into shape, it gave me motivation and ideas would come to my head for things that I could fix with the business, things that I could fix in my relationship with my wife and our family. And so within a year after I got into the gym,
Hmm.
we went from going 30, $40,000 a month into debt to paying off 10 or $20,000 of debt every month. My wife quit her job. I started paying myself. We decided to adopt our first child. Like all these things turned around
Wow.
within 1 year. I got into triathlon. I did a half Ironman within the first year of going into the gym. After I'd never run over a mile in my life. I was not a runner. And a year later, here I am doing a half Ironman. I did a marathon and stuff. And it all
Wow.
started with, well, I think I need to go back to the gym. That's what kicked it off. And so that was one of the main lessons I learned is I've got to do certain things to take care of myself, not just so I can be in good shape or be healthy, but that flows into other parts of my life and it helps me to do better, make better decisions, live better in every aspect of my life.
Because they're all interwoven, aren't they? I mean,
Yeah, it's all connected.
so wow, I love I love this. I can't wait to meet you in person next week. But let me ask you this. So you talked about, I think this message is so important about working hard, right? You thought that was your key. Just bust it out. Like, so what was the transformation? What was the solution that you found that if the answer isn't working hard, what was the answer that you found?
So I'm glad you asked this because this is the second lesson I really want to pass on, which is boundaries are fantastic. I love boundaries. But I love artificial boundaries. Natural boundaries are hard. A natural boundary is that there are only 24 hours in the day and that you have to sleep sometime. Those are natural boundaries. And if you run up against the natural boundaries, you've got problems
Mm,
because those natural boundaries are they're going to kick your behind. I mean, if you don't sleep, if you work 100 hours a week for years on end like I did, it's going to catch up with you. Airline pilots have something, they talk about something called sleep debt because when you're flying an airplane, it's kind of important to stay awake. And so they talk about sleep debt and how if you go into sleep debt, you've got to pay it back at some point. At
mm,
some point, it will catch up with you. And so the pilots are really aware of this. And it's the same for anybody else. It's just the consequences aren't quite as dire. But
yeah.
so if you live in that kind of debt and you go beyond the natural boundaries of what you're able to do, it's going to catch up with you. The other side of it is when you think that you can work 100 hours a week, it feels like unlimited time. And when you have unlimited time, you can waste time. You can
Yeah.
make bad decisions. But when I said, I'm going to work 40 hours a week and I don't care what happens, I don't care if I go out of business, I'm working 40 hours a week. I'm cutting down from 100 to 40, and I'm not working Saturdays. I'm not working weekends unless there's a huge emergency, but I'm not making emergencies anymore like I always used to. So it
Mm.
was 5 days a week, 40 hours. I'm getting off work at 5. I'm going home. I'm not doing any more work. When I set that artificial boundary, all of a sudden, hey, I don't have time to mess around. I don't have time to make mistakes. I don't have time to go to every single meeting that somebody wants me to go to. I don't have time to do 10 experiments. I've got to figure out what works and focus on that because I've only got 40 hours a week. So when I set that artificial boundary, I started making better business
Hmm.
decisions. And that's how the business turned around. It was 2 months. It was 2 months from accruing 40 or 50 grand in debt every month to paying off 10 or 20 grand a month in debt. It only took me 2 months to make that turnaround, but it was a major shift. And I had to make some hard decisions during that time. But it all started with let's set some boundaries. And I'm only going to work 40 hours a week. That was one of the boundaries I set.
Wow, artificial boundaries. What a powerful lesson. And I mean, the fact that you can work so much less and achieve so much more, that's phenomenal. I had a similar experience that I'm going to share in Florida, and it's just you gotta and you gotta give yourself that sleep. You gotta nurture the relationships. You gotta be a family man and care about your body. All these other things are going to feed in. And if you're working those long weeks, there's no way you can have that kind of balance in your life, right?
Right. And I mean, I'm lucky. My wife stuck with me through all these years when I was ignoring her and I was gone all the time and I wasn't supportive in any way, but she stuck with me. But I know a lot of people who lived the same lifestyle that I did and their families fell apart because of it. And now they're looking at it saying, wait a second, this wasn't worth this business. Like, what is this business? Why do I even have this
Yeah.
business if it's not to enrich the rest of my life?
You're a perfect fit for our message at Zenith Mastermind. This is gonna be perfect. But let me ask you one or two last questions. So you talked about a lot of the struggle. I mean, $500,000 in debt, being overweight, and just not really finding the financial success. All these tough things that you've had to struggle through to get to where you're at. But what have you experienced since then that has made, as an entrepreneur, right? That has made it all worth it? Because I think that's what really inspires people, is seeing like there's a light at the end of the tunnel. You keep pushing, you keep going, you keep grinding. You're gonna in a smart way, of course. You're gonna there's some great things that could be ahead. What's been that the payoff, do you feel like, for you, Josh?
Well, I would say it in slightly different terms because I don't think there's anything that makes what I did worth it. But seeing as how it's in the past and it's already done, there are ways that I can take a bad thing and turn it into a good thing. And the only thing that really makes it worth it, quote unquote, or makes it so that I can turn that bad thing into a good thing is if I can help other people avoid the mistakes that I've made.
Hmm.
Because any success that I experience as a result of the lessons I've learned, that's great. But if I can pass it on to some other young entrepreneur and say, hey, don't do these 5 things, don't go into debt, don't work 100-hour weeks, don't ignore your personal relationships, don't ignore your health. If I can speak to one young entrepreneur and get those messages through, and they come back 10 years later and they're like, I took your advice and here I am, I'm successful. And I didn't have to make those sacrifices. I didn't sacrifice my family. I didn't sacrifice my health. And that's what makes it worth it. That's what makes it feel like, okay, it wasn't a total loss.
Mm, nice. So tell us about how can someone connect with you if they're like, man, I love this message. I want to avoid those pitfalls. I want to learn from Josh. What do you've got? What kind of setup do you got to help in place to help people?
So my website, joshsteimle.com, I do a weekly newsletter there. And actually, it's more than weekly now because I launched this published author podcast. So now I'm blasting out emails left and right. But I do a lot of talking about thought leadership and how to publish a book and that type of thing, of course. But I also share some of these lessons in entrepreneurship. Uh, at this point, I've made so many mistakes as an entrepreneur. All I have to talk about is doing things that I haven't done. And that's like the recipe for success now. It's just process of elimination. And so I try to share some of the success lessons that I've learned and a lot of the mistakes that I've been through in the hopes that it's beneficial to some other entrepreneur out there, because I would love to be able to prevent or help somebody prevent themselves from having to go through all the same lessons that I've been through.
Hmm. I love it. I love it. So, and then I guess last question, what opportunities, you've talked about this time freedom, right? And the impact it's made on your health and family, but I guess what opportunity, if someone could create a great business, create some passive income streams through real estate or other means, what has that done for you to have more time in your life, to have the time freedom in your life? What have you been able to do it, I guess, as a result of making some of these epiphanies and really having time freedom back in your life?
Yeah. What's really freed up my time has been this. So I have a friend, Blake Hansen, who's an entrepreneur up in Boise, and he runs multiple 7-figure companies. He's approaching, or he's over 100 million in revenue between his combined companies. And he really broke through one of these impediments that I had in my life, which was this idea that you can only run one business and do it well. If you try to do multiple businesses, you're going to fail because nobody can run multiple businesses well. And throughout my entire 20-year career, I've always been trying to run multiple businesses and I haven't done it well. And so I looked at Blake and I said, how are you doing this? Because you are running multiple businesses and doing it well. And he said, well, I don't run any of the businesses. That's the secret,
Mm,
is I start the business and I bring somebody else in and I replace myself. And so he's actually in our published author program now, and he's writing a book called Replace Yourself about how to be an entrepreneur and start multiple businesses, but then replace yourself. And that concept paired with a book that just came out by another friend of mine, Ben Hardy, it's called Who Not How.
Oh yeah.
And this
He's
book
a
is
good
all
friend of
about,
mine. I love that book.
yeah, that book is game changing. I mean, just the title is game changing. I'm just always
Yes.
thinking about, like, all right, but the core idea is whenever you have something that needs to be done, you think, instead of how do I do this, you think, who can do this for me? And I've been thinking about that so much lately on everything
Mm.
I'm doing. Okay, I don't really like doing this. Who could do this for me? I don't have time to do this. Who could do this for me? And as I've switched my thinking about who can do this for me, I've started outsourcing all sorts of stuff. And I know it's hard sometimes when you're an entrepreneur to outsource because you think, oh, I could save this much money if I don't outsource. But if you can find the things that make you money and
Mm.
then you outsource those things and then it makes you more money, so it pays for itself and then it's making a profit, that's the name of the game, right? It's pretty simple. And so outsourcing things, like I'm outsourcing everything on my podcast other than getting the meetings and recording the meetings, but everything else I'm outsourcing.
Nice.
And my podcast was profitable before it launched because some of the people I interviewed before I was even putting episodes out turned into business partners and have driven
Mm.
revenue for me. And so that's something where I say, hey, yeah, I'm paying $4,000 a month to outsource my podcast, but I'm already making more than that. So it's profitable from day one. But if I had tried to edit that podcast myself, first of all, I'd be so far behind right now and it wouldn't be launching for another 6 months. And I wouldn't be doing a good job at it. And I wouldn't have time to go do more interviews that turn into more revenue for me. So that Who Not How has been a
Mm.
game changer for me as well to free up my time. So now that allows me to do, with free time, I can do the podcast, I can run published author of this program. I'm a research assistant at Harvard, so I'm helping
Whoa.
professors there to write case studies, which is something I've dreamed of doing for a long time. So I have time to do all sorts of other
Mm.
things, write more books, but I can do a lot of the things I've dreamed of doing because of the way that I'm implementing this Who Not How philosophy.
It's a mindset shift, isn't it? Oh my gosh, that's so powerful. Such great messages, Josh. I think you've just added tremendous value to everyone that's listened today. Thank you for your time, and boy, I am so excited to meet you in person at the Zenith Mastermind Retreat next week, and this is going to be great. Thanks again
Um,
for jumping on.
Thank you so much, Nate. I'm excited for the event next week as well. It's going to be awesome.